The following is a Shaw TV Public Affairs presentation. Constituency Report is produced as a public service by members of the BC Legislature through the facilities of Shaw TV.
Hello and welcome to Constituency Report on Shaw TV. I'm your host, Joanna Groves, and joining us today is Carole James, the MLA for Victoria Beacon Hill and BC's Minister of Finance. Thank you for being here today, Carole.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Great. I think we last spoke in October, and I think you've been a bit busy since then. Can you tell me a little bit about what's been going on?
It's been an extraordinarily busy time over the winter. I think we talked just after we'd come out with our September budget update.
That's right.
And now we've actually come out with a full year budget. So it was wonderful to be able to take the full year, to be able to really put our stamp on the budget, and to be able to continue the good work that we started in September. And this really is a budget that's focused on people. That is our focus as a government, and it's our focus in this budget. So I hope people will see that it's a budget that really reflects their needs, their priorities, the kinds of things that they believe are important for us to address as a government in British Columbia. And while we can't do everything overnight, while we can't address all of the challenges, I hope people see that we've made an effort to take their priorities and address those and get going on the projects and programs that are so important to them.
Absolutely, and I think that you've been traveling around the province a little bit talking about the budget. Can you tell me about that? And here you are at UVic, and what the reaction's been?
It's been a very positive response, I have to say. You know, I think people often think of a budget as a document that stands by itself, that doesn't relate to anything else. It's really the fiscal picture of British Columbia. And one of the things I said I wanted to do when I came in as finance minister and was appointed was to be able to make sure that it was a document that mattered to the people of this province, that really reflected the people who helped build our strong economy. We're very fortunate in British Columbia. We continue to see very strong economic growth. All of our economic indicators, whether we're talking about retail sales or employment numbers, exports, all of those continue to be strong in our province. But I think what was forgotten by the previous government was that it's the people of the province who help build that strong economy, and they really need to share in the prosperity of that strong economy. So that's really what we've done in this budget, is ensured that the people of British Columbia are sharing in the wealth and the richness of our province. So part of that has been getting out. I had a great event up at UVic with students to give them a chance to ask their questions about the budget, and I've continued traveling around the province. We did an event in Prince George with the Chamber of Commerce, Courtenay as well. So we'll continue to get out around British Columbia to really talk about the positive changes that we're making.
Great. What have some of the feedback been?
Well, I think probably one of the ones, and I know we'll talk a little more about the specific programs in the budget, but I think one of the most emotional pieces for me was the event we held in Courtenay, where I had a childcare provider stand up and say that she sent a note to all of her parents, letting them know that as of April 1st, they were going to see a reduction in their fees of up to $350 in some cases. The mom came up to me after the event had finished and said, I received one of those letters for my kids in daycare, and I thought it was for someone else. I brought it back because I thought it was only for very low income families. But in fact, she told me that it was for my family as well. And so the difference that that's going to make, I mean, she talked about utilizing those dollars for rent, being able to buy groceries, just basics in a family. To see those kinds of dollars into your pocket makes a huge difference. And so I think it's the personal stories, it's the impact it's going to have on affordability for families that really makes a difference.
Yeah, it must feel good to make a real significant impact in real people's lives.
That's really what government should be about. From my perspective, I think people elect us to go to the legislature, to form a government, and to work every day on their behalf. And that's really what we're doing as a government. And the Premier reminds us of that. You know, get up every day, focus on the people who we're here to serve. And I hope people see that reflected in the budget.
And I think also reflected was in a new tradition that you may have started. Traditionally, ministers of finance buy new shoes on budget day. What did you do?
Well, I wanted to do something that really reflected the budget, and I think, you know, it's a long time tradition for finance ministers to buy new shoes. I have to tell you, I'm not a shopper, so going out to get new shoes was not on my list. And I decided I wanted to do something that reflected the priorities and the focus of this budget. So I took the time to go to the Y, which is in my neighborhood, to visit a childcare center and to be able to spend some time. I read a book, Pete the Cat. Any parents who have young children, including my grandson many years ago, love Pete the Cat books. And Pete the Cat Got New Shoes was a great opportunity to be able to read to the kids at the childcare center and to spend a little time with them to, once again, remember why we're here, remember where the focus is, and remember what a budget is really going to make a difference to.
What a great new tradition. Hopefully it'll carry on, but we'll
I hope
see.
so. It was certainly fun. It was a great way to start the budget eve, as we called it.
Absolutely. I think a big priority in this year's budget was housing. Can you tell people about how that's going to affect them, what changes they can expect to see?
So there really were two major investments in this budget, a number of other pieces that I know we'll get a chance to talk about as well, but the two main areas were childcare and housing. And so just to focus on housing, I think it's probably a piece that has come up more often from community members, from not-for-profit organizations, but also from business. And I think that's another important part of this budget, is that the investments that we're making aren't simply investments on affordability and families. They're also investments in building a strong economy.
That's right.
I can't tell you the number of businesses who come to me to say that they get someone as an employee. They're the perfect fit for their company. They're terrific. They're going to come to British Columbia. And then they take a look at the real estate page. And they make a determination that it's just too high a real estate market, or there's no vacancy in the community that they're moving to, and they lose a great employee. They lose someone who could help a business grow, who could help all of us when it comes to the economy in British Columbia. So we took the time over the fall, myself and the housing minister, Selena Robinson, to put together a comprehensive housing strategy, a 30-point plan that looks at both supply and demand, as well as support and security for existing tenants who are in affordable housing, because that's a big issue as well. So it was so exciting to be able to bring a strategy, a long-term 10-year plan around housing, major investments in building housing, and housing for people who live on the street, who are homeless, because that's critical. We've had great success with our modular housing that we announced in the September's budget. We're expanding that as more communities are coming on board and really keen to take it on. But we're also looking at housing for families. We're looking at housing for people who are working, who can't quite make that mortgage payment, who can't quite make that rent payment. Building actual purpose-built rental housing that will really make a difference there. Women fleeing abuse and their families, again, a real crisis point. So we're building housing in that area. And then seniors. So a broad range of affordable housing to be able to address the real need that's out there, the supply need that's out there. And then on the demand side, looking at a number of taxes to be able to discourage speculation in the market, to encourage people to be able to rent places in communities instead of having empty neighborhoods, empty homes in neighborhoods, which doesn't build the community, which doesn't support the neighborhoods, which is really what you want homes to be. So getting people out of the market who are treating it as a stock market, which we think is critical. And then, as I mentioned, the other piece is supporting existing housing. So there are a number of co-op housing units, for example, that really need maintenance, that haven't seen dollars for maintenance. We're putting money in to support those so we don't lose the existing affordability base that's already there for housing as well. So comprehensive strategy and real affordability for families.
It sounds like it. And I think there's also a piece in there for college and university students.
And this is an exciting piece as well. I sat on the Select Standing Committee on Finance, and I have to tell you, in opposition, every year universities and colleges would come and talk about the fact that they could build affordable housing if the government allowed them to borrow. The government refused to do it. Well, we became government and we're allowing it. So universities and colleges, many of them who already have land, will be able to come to government, will be able to borrow money, will be able to build that affordable housing. That'll provide students with housing on campus. But the other bonus, of course, is that students are often in the affordability units in communities. And so if they're able to move up onto campus, that frees up affordability and makes an increase in the vacancy rate in communities as well. So good economic sense, because the land's already there and the universities and colleges are keen to be able to partner with us in that area. And good for communities because it frees up rental spaces for other people as well.
Absolutely. And you touched a little bit on childcare when we were talking about the budget overall earlier. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I know it was a huge priority of this budget.
This really was a historic investment, $1 billion into childcare over the next 3 years. And there really are three parts to childcare: affordability, accessibility, and quality. And we want to make sure that the investment we put in addresses all three because they're all critical. So on the affordability end, there'll be 2 new grants coming. There'll be one that starts April 1st and one that starts in September. These will go to eligible childcare centres who sign on to the program, and they'll then have the ability to reduce parent fees. As I said, this is going to be an incredible bonus for families who are paying, in many cases, more than their mortgage payment when it comes to childcare. Just can't afford to be able to manage. It's also, again, similar to housing, an economic issue, because when women can't get back into the workforce, that impacts our GDP as a province. It impacts productivity. I can't tell you the number of families who tell me how tough it is to concentrate on your job or to have to leave your job because your childcare situation's not working out or you can't find a spot. So it addresses productivity and recruitment and retention for employees as well. So those new grants are coming in around the affordability piece, which is very exciting. But the other piece that's a challenge, of course, are spaces, because even if families do have resources, they aren't able to find a space. And so we're also investing in building childcare spaces over the next 3 years to increase the capacity that's there in the system. And then the final piece on the childcare strategy is the issue of quality. We know early childhood educators are critical to the system. Providing a good opportunity and a good start in life for our children is a benefit for all of us. It will save money in the justice system and the school system if we can identify challenges early and address them. So making sure we have enough early childhood educators in the system, providing them with wages and benefits and supports that will ensure that they are respected and that they have a quality job, all of that's going to be critical. So we're also looking at bursaries, for example, for early childhood educators so that they can go to school, so that they can get the qualifications they need. So really, as I said, historic investment in families, historic investment in our employment, and historic investment in our economy in British Columbia.
Well, that's great. It sounds like an exciting plan, and I'm sure it's reassuring to a lot of parents out there.
And there'll be lots of opportunity for parents to be able to, and childcare providers, to learn about the program, go on the website through the Ministry of Children and Families. The information's up there. There are opportunities for them to get all the details so they can make sure they take advantage of a new program and support them as well.
Wonderful. And I know generally affordability is another priority of this budget. Can you tell the folks at home about some of the measures they can see coming forward?
Well, I think one of the big pieces that I think is going to impact so many people in British Columbia is the elimination of the medical service premiums. We are the only province left in all of Canada who still has medical service premiums. And it really is a regressive tax, an example of a bad tax, because whether you make $60,000 in family income or you make $1 million in family income, you actually pay the same amount in medical service premiums for your family. A real hardship and also a nightmare to administer. I can't tell you again the number of employers and employees who talk about leaving a job that provides benefits, going to a job that doesn't provide benefits. How do you make sure you get that work through? So making this change, for individuals, it'll save them $900 a year. For families, it's going to save them $1,800 a year. Well, those are dollars that are going to be spent back in the community, back in small businesses, help our economy continue to grow, help people with affordability when it comes to housing. So that'll happen January 1st, 2020. We've cut MSP premiums by 50%, medical service premiums this January, so there's a 50% savings already for families. And January 1st, 2020, those will be gone. And as I said, it will make a huge difference to individuals, to families, and to our economy as those dollars circulate back.
Fantastic. And I think there was a big announcement around pharmacare, which will also help a lot of people.
You know, the stories in our neighborhoods of seniors who are taking half of their prescription because they can't take the full prescription because they can't afford the full prescription. They have a deductible that they have to pay before pharmacare kicks in and provides support for their medication. And so we made a major investment in this budget where we're actually eliminating the deductible for very low income seniors and families, people who need medications, who have been having to make choices between eating and buying healthy groceries and paying for their medication. It's not a choice anyone should have to make. And, you know, we'll continue to push at the federal level to see a national pharmacare program. That really is something we believe deeply in and that we believe is really a solution when it comes to affordability and addressing the challenges of pharmacare. But to make this kind of difference for low-income families where they won't have to make those tough choices, that's what a budget is about. Those are the kinds of differences we should be making as government.
Well, it sounds those two things combined, that's going to make a real difference in people's lives, especially for seniors. And the safer rates are going up. For those that don't know, it's the Seniors Rental Assistance Program.
That's right. And it's another piece where people will have heard us talk about a renter's rebate, and we're still working on that opportunity for support for renters. But again, we're starting with the most vulnerable. So we're starting with low-income seniors and working families on low income, providing them with more resources as well.
Wonderful. Well, we have to go to a break. There's so much to talk about. When we come back, I'd like to talk to you about some of the things that are happening in your local community.
Great.
If Carole is your MLA and you'd like to get in touch with her, get your pen and paper handy, as we'll be putting her contact details up on your screen. And we'll hear more from Carole James on Constituency Report after the break. Welcome back to Constituency Report on Shaw TV. I'm your host, Joanna Groves, and we've been speaking today with the MLA for Victoria Beacon Hill and BC's Minister of Finance, Carole James. Thanks again for being here, Carole.
Thank you.
Great. Before the break, we were speaking a lot about what people can see in this year's budget. I'd like to talk about the context of your local community and what's been happening there. So what have you been hearing from people in your community?
Well, certainly the issue of poverty, the challenges faced by individuals living in the cycle of poverty, housing. Victoria has one of the lowest vacancy rates in the province, and so the issue of affordable housing continues to be a real crisis in our community. So I have to say I've had pretty positive response from people who've been really thrilled to see the supports that are coming into place when it comes to affordable housing. The supports that are going to put money back in people's pockets, I think will make a real difference. We made a couple of decisions in the September's budget that also have carried on and have impacted people in our community, everything from the disabilities bus pass, returning that bus pass once again, at not clawing back the dollars, but actually providing the resources for that, has made a big difference for people with diverse abilities in our community who now can get out to their appointments or get out for a social event in the community. That's made a big difference. We gave an increase to people with disabilities and income assistance in the September budget of $100 a month. So a start. It's certainly not going to address all the issues that people face, but a start while we develop the poverty reduction plan. So those have made a big impact, have had a big impact and have made a big difference in our communities. I had someone stop me to say that she went into her social assistance office and people were asking her about what kinds of support she needed and how they could make sure that they helped her. And she really felt like there had been a shift and a change. And that's really what we want to accomplish for people, is a hand up for people.
Oh, that's so good to hear. I know that you've been working on some of the local issues, especially around poverty and affordability. You do an ID clinic at your office every year. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I can. It's something I'm really proud of, that we started in our office just a couple of years after I became an MLA back in 2005, where we provide support. One of the barriers for many people who are living on the street or who've had some challenges in their lives is to have ID. Often their ID has been lost, or they've moved, or it's been taken away. And it's a real challenge. I don't know how many of the viewers have had their ID lost, but it's a real challenge to track down, to get all the forms filled out, to make sure that you are able to do all of that. So my office provides that service. We provide an opportunity for us to partner with the community. We've expanded over the years so that we can provide more IDs and more ID clinics. We're working with UVic, for example, community organizations, and we help people fill in those forms. We provide some resources to be able to help them get their ID. And I have to tell you, there are people who years ago received their ID through an ID clinic at our office who will stop me on the street and say what a difference it made, that they were able to get a place to rent, or they were able to open a bank account, that they became somebody when it came to a number of services that you need ID for. So it's been a very successful project, and I'm really thrilled that we've now been able to broaden it out and have community groups and organizations come on board, which gives us the opportunity to expand even more. Victoria Foundation has come on board as well. So a huge thank you to all the community groups that are helping out in really making a difference for people.
That sounds great. Moving on to the local economy, I know that we've been talking about diversifying. Can you tell me about what's been going on there locally?
Well, it's interesting. I think there probably are a lot of people in Victoria who may not realize that the last number of years, high tech has actually exceeded tourism. When we look at our economic growth here in Victoria, it really has taken off. And why not? When you look at what a fantastic place Victoria is to live in. We have the lifestyle, we have the kinds of places that people want, not as much traffic as Vancouver, and we really have a great deal of expertise as well. And so we've seen a number of high-tech companies that have expanded or moved into to Victoria across the region, but also in downtown Victoria as well. And they're making a real difference. They've brought young families to our community. We're starting to see enrollment increase in some of our schools. And we're building that synergy that's needed to see further expansions around high tech. So our government's had a couple of very big announcements in Victoria to support that high tech work, to support the connections that companies are making with each other. And it's really wonderful to see, because it provides, again, more opportunities for employment for people moving to Victoria and diversifies our economy, which will help us weather any economic storms that may arrive in the future.
Absolutely. And I think we have a photo of a visit you made. What's happening there?
Lamazoo is the name of the company, a fantastic high-tech company right down on Fort Street in downtown Victoria. And I had an opportunity to try on the 3D glasses as well. And they do some extraordinary work. You can actually go onto a mining site, for example, and see a 3D image of where the roads will go, of what kind of mitigation they're looking at, what kind of support for the environment. They're actually doing some work as well with veterinarian colleges and university programs, where they provided a 3D image, so you don't need to look at dissecting animals. You can actually do it now with technology, which ends up with less toxic materials and less challenges and more learning opportunities. So many exciting possibilities.
That is exciting to think it's happening right here in town.
Exactly.
And I know you had a visit to a very different organization, Our Place, and I wonder if you can tell me about some of the great local organizations in your community doing good work.
You know, we are so fortunate, and I feel so fortunate as an MLA to work with community groups and organizations like Our Place, like Kool-Aid, like Anawim House, like Umbrella. There's so many, too many to list when it comes to service organizations, not-for-profits that are providing huge support for people in our community, and who really are responsive to the kinds of needs that are there. As we see new challenges, they step up to the plate, they provide those kinds of supports that need to be there, and our community couldn't manage without them. We all owe them a debt of gratitude for the kind of work that the staff do. And it's been really tough, particularly with the fentanyl crisis that we've seen over the last while. I've seen the stress and strain on our first responders. I met with firefighters this past week in my community office. I've met with outreach workers, and I know the struggle that they're facing and the stress that they're facing in seeing people who are overdosing and having to bring them back. Being grateful they're able to do that, but knowing the kind of challenge that that creates. So through our Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, the first one in Canada, we've really seen an expansion of supports, an expansion of naloxone kits to be able to provide that support in our community. And really we need to get to the root cause of addictions and address that issue as well, so we can stop the kinds of deaths that we're seeing in our province and in our community of Victoria. Absolutely, so important.
I'd like to move on to some of the local events that you've been attending. But actually, before I do that, I wanted to show some pictures of some art in your community office. I was skipping ahead. There it is up on the screen.
So this is a wonderful opportunity for artists to be able to display in our community office. It's great for us in our office. We have different artwork every couple of months as different artists come in and display. They're for sale, so if people just want to drop by the community office on Fort Street, they can see the art that's on the wall. But it's a great program and a great way to support arts and culture in our community, which again is a huge part of our diversification and our economy in Victoria.
Absolutely, and a great excuse to visit your office every
month or two. Exactly.
So back to events. I hear Pink Shirt Day happened. I think it was last month.
It was, and you can see a picture here with the Chief of Police in Mitzi Dean, my fellow MLA next door, and an Oak Bay police officer as well. It was great, and really it's about the students, and the focus really was cyberbullying this year when it came to bullying, and Pink Shirt Day, and a chance for all of us together, nonpartisan across the legislature, to gather together to show our statement and to show our strong support for the young people. We also were able to put some resources into a program for parents to learn about the internet, to be able to learn about social media and to know the signals to watch for, because often the parents are the first ones and the first protection for many of our young people. So we were able to give some money to the BC Confederation of Parent Associations to support that program as well.
Oh, that sounds great. Seeing the picture of Mitzi Dean there reminded me that I think it was last month as well, she was named Parliamentary Secretary for Gender Equity, and that's under your ministry.
It is, and I was thrilled. Thrilled to work with Mitzi, as I always am, but thrilled to have that Parliamentary Secretary under our Ministry of Finance as well, because for many women, when it comes to equity, when it comes to gender equity across the board, the issue of the economy really makes a difference. The issue of pay, the issue of the challenges that people are facing. So it's going to be great. Mitzi's hit the ground running, no surprise, and is already out there doing some extraordinary work.
Great, and that leads into the next event, which was the Stolen Sisters March. I think that was earlier this month.
It was. You can see a little bit of blue sky there. It was one of those days in Victoria, cold, rain, wind, which seemed appropriate for the Stolen Sisters March, a march every year held again to recognize murdered and missing Indigenous women in our province and in our community. So it was an incredible turnout. I'm very emotional as always.
Yeah, and another emotional event was the memorial for Dave Barrett, who was our premier back in the 70s, briefly.
It was. I felt honored to be asked to MC that event, and what a good reminder about the power of government and what a difference government can make in people's lives. The one wonderful part about that memorial, as tough as it was for all of us to say goodbye to Dave, was that the memorial really reflected his humor, his personality, his larger-than-life personality, the work that government did. I think things we all take for granted, agricultural land reserve, question period, basics, pharmacare that we talked about earlier, all of those were brought in by the Dave Barrett government. So what a good reminder to all of us about the power of government and the difference it can make in people's lives.
Absolutely. And of course, he did so much, as you mentioned, and I think a lot of people got the chance to get to know him who may not have been around for that government.
And the people that I still stop in the neighborhood who will say to me, you know, I remember when the Premier Dave Barrett, he used to come out of the legislature and he'd be walking down the government street and we'd stop and have a chat, and he really was the people. They've called him the People's Premier, and that's for good reason, because he really was the People's Premier.
Absolutely, that's great, and I don't think they'd let our current Premier do that now, not with all the new security.
It's a little more
conditions.
challenging,
Yep.
I think, today.
Well, we've got 1 minute left. I'm wondering if you can tell us a bit about what you're going to be doing once session is over.
Well, we go until the end of May, so those people who want to get into the legislature to see it firsthand have an opportunity till the end of May, and then really it is a chance to go back to the community. We've got a little bit of a break week over Easter, and so I've been meeting with my constituents, catching up on things in the community, which is very important to do. So it's the reason I ran, and the best part of the job.
Wonderful. Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time. There's a lot we could have talked about, but we didn't get a chance.
Exactly.
Thank you again for being here. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Great. We've been speaking with Carole James, the MLA for Victoria Beacon Hill and BC's Minister of Finance. I'm your host, Joanna Groves. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Constituency Report on Shaw TV.